All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I am Jen Torres. I am the Director of Customer Success Operations here, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Michael, who's on the product team, and Nitesh, who's with professional services. We wanted to use this time to hear from you. So we just have a couple of slides that we're going to share to kind of set the tone for today's session, but we really just wanted to make this about what you're wanting to talk about and what you're wanting to hear from us. So our focus is going to be on V3 migration and how you can get started with Quality Hub. So I'm going to turn it over to Nitesh to get us started with V3 migration and what you need to know right now.
Hi everyone, my name is Nitesh Satija and currently I'm a manager of professional services. From the V3 migration point of view, so the V2 is sunsetting. Here is what you need to know. So Prover V2 will reach end of its life on December 31st, 2026. After that day, V2 will no longer receive bug fixes, security patches, or new features. Development, continue use of the V2 carries increased risk as your Salesforce org evolves. If your team is still on V2, we recommend you to just move to the V3. That is your path forward. So in Provar Automation V3 is a supported path forward built with improved performance, stability, enhanced locator support, and AI-driven capabilities. So we have listed the AI capabilities which is provided in V3 right now are test step generation, test data generation, agent testing, self-healing, and MCP. Over to you, Michael. Thanks.
Thanks, Nitesh. Yeah, and then on the previous bits regarding the V2 and V3, it's so to kind of give an example of where we're looking at in terms of our release cadence towards between now and the end of the year. For V2 and V3 respectively, we have the summer 26 release upcoming in May. So that'll be the next release coming for both versions. And then usually around the September timeline, it just depends on when Salesforce does their sandbox preview and all that. September timeline, maybe October, just depends on that'll be for the winter. I guess it's winter 27. It'll be so that'll be most likely the last official release that we do for V2 in that timeline. The only exception could be if we have any last bug fixes or change requests that come in and we want to get those in before the end of the year. But very likely you'll see the next two releases for V2 going along with the Salesforce release timelines. And then that will be likely what we'll be expecting for V2, just to kind of give that heads up there to plan accordingly. So as far as Quality Hub goes, everyone has access to this now. So the kind of the way to go about this process, if you don't already have access to Quality Hub, the best way to do that is to contact your CSM if you need help or guidance on what to do with that process. But it's all available through the Success portal. So you can go directly on the Provar Success portal and you'll be able to download or install the app directly from there. You do need a target Salesforce org to install it in. So if you haven't got approvals from your Salesforce admin or your team to install that in your production org, which is the permanent location typically for the app, then you can always install it in a sandbox org and play around with it and pull that forward into production if necessary. The only caveats to that, of course, is that any data or anything that you create in those sandbox or scratch orgs would not transfer over to the production environment automatically. So you need to kind of account for that. So the general recommendation is to get started in a production environment, a Salesforce org that you can install this in. Again, the main thing that you're getting out of this application, of course, we're providing this to our customers for free for now. So the idea is that you'll be able to get all this information that you're reporting on from the Provar Automation side inside of Salesforce. So most of our customers are utilizing it in this way where they'll have automation running on either a local install or just running it through a CI process. And you want to be able to report all those executions into one area. So everyone has insight into the actual status of your Provar test cases. So it's not just living on someone's machine, or it's living in a spreadsheet somewhere, or maybe in a PDF or an HTML report that we generate. So the idea is, again, centralized reporting. That's kind of the key aspect here. There's a lot of other capabilities within Quality Hub. We've done a lot of demos, a lot of videos on this. So you can go to our YouTube if you want to find out more information about some of the specifics there as far as the new dashboards and things like that we released. But we've also released a lot of different AI capabilities, which are free to use as well. So we have our own provided Provar API key that you can use for AI integrations. And this is for test case generation. You can utilize different things like providing summaries on test cases. We have test case and test project validation as well, which was in the recent release. And then we have a release coming this week for Quality Hub, which will have additional updates regarding our integration with different vendors such as Capado and Jira and our Provar for Agentforce plugin as well. So we release about once every 4 to 6 weeks for Quality Hub. So you can expect a release kind of in that cadence. We'll have a new version with new release notes and new documentation to kind of go along with that. But again, the main value here for Quality Hub is centered on reporting, integrations, and then our AI capabilities that we have for test case generation and things like that. So we also have Provar test case generation, which was in the couple of releases prior that is now available through Quality Hub, where you can enable that and generate Provar test cases that you can download and import into your Provar projects directly. So I think that's it for that one. If you want to go to the next slide, Jim.
Does not want me to go to the next slide. Really quick on Quality Hub, we do have our newest Quality Hub Essentials certification that's available on the University of Provar as of today. So after this session, I'll be sending the recording along with those demo video links that Michael mentioned, as well as the link to the new Quality Hub Essentials certification. And the next slide, which I'm having difficulty getting to right now, is really just opening it up to questions for you. So this is not normally our webinar format that we have, which was intentional. We wanted this to be a conversation. So we'd love to hear from you now. If you'd like to come off of mute or throw something in the chat for the rest of the time here, we are here to listen to your questions and hopefully get you some answers.
Hi, is Quality Hub something that is that another paid service or is it part of our already existing um, product?
Yes, if you already didn't have licenses for it, we're providing those licenses now. So essentially, all you need to do is install the application. It's a managed package in whatever Salesforce org you want. And then from our side, what we do is we take basically the org ID for your org that you've installed it in, and we just activate you. So we turn it on and say that you've essentially how we're doing it is we're giving you a license for every automation license that you have. So say you have 5 Provar Automation developer licenses, that equates to 5 Quality Hub licenses. You can also pay for additional licenses if you want some beyond that threshold as well.
Okay, gotcha.
How much would the license be if you wanted an extra?
I need to check the specifics because they may have changed recently, but last time I remember it being around 5 or 550 per user. So it's somewhere in there. So if you had 5 users, somewhere around 2 to 3,000 additional. Yeah. I'm
Michael?
ballparking numbers here, so don't take that as gospel. But yes, it's we can get you specific quotes if you have specific asks there, though.
Michael,
Okay,
we have
thanks.
a question in the chat about Quality Hub being connected to Jira and automation. Do we have any videos on that?
Yeah, I can check our repository. We do have documentation which is up to date for the Jira setup. If you are encountering issues, definitely do reach out. We can definitely unblock you there because we've set this up with a number of our customers. But if you're having trouble, my first step would be to point you to the documentation that we have for Jira, which is updated on our website as well. I'll have to find the link for that, but I'll definitely send that in the chat once I do. here's the updated documentation here. So anyone can access that. That's a public link, but that's from our Confluence documentation for our Provar Quality Hub and Jira integration. So again, if you've gone through those steps already, or if you've already believed you've configured it and you're still facing issues, then definitely do reach out. We don't want people to bang their heads against the wall here. We'd definitely be happy to unblock you.
And it's something that I'm just quickly scanning the website. It's something that integrates with Flowsum as well.
Yes. Yeah, so Quality Hub has a number of different extensions pre-packaged. They're installed separately, but those can all be installed from directly within the app. So we have ones for Jira, Azure DevOps, Capado, GearSet, Flowsum, Salesforce DevOps Center, and a few others as well. But those are kind of the main ones that we have in there. Yeah.
And so if, like you mentioned, the licensing and installing Quality Hub through a managed package, that managed package would live on our Salesforce org, not like the Flowsum org.
Yeah, so that's where you have some, I guess, some agency. Our typical recommendation, if you're using a tool like Flowsum or Capado, where they're managed packages as well, and they're installed in a particular org, if those orgs are provided by those vendors, then we would also recommend that you install Quality Hub in those orgs directly. The reason is the integration works best when the packages exist in the same environment because it can access the records, natively. There's no call outs or anything like that. So that enables the integration to work.
Gotcha. As far as the AI test generation, is that for any type of test, or is it just like the API call out, or can it also do like the UI creation where you test your flows and stuff?
Yeah, it can do for UI as well. So we've done some demos on it in the past and previous webinars that we've done. So you can kind of see an example of how it works, but you can also follow along the documentation there again and kind of get enabled with it and see how it works for your use cases. But I will say it works best for Salesforce centered scenarios just because we have the metadata context that we can provide that helps us to generate things like metadata locators for those fields. For non-Salesforce scenarios, it's still functional, but you may be required to provide additional context for that added reliability. In other words, if without a page or a screenshot or additional information, then the generator will lack the proper context to come up with something reliably.
Right.
Reliably.
And so for the how does it work with having only context? So let's say we install it in our Provar org, sorry, our Flowsum org. Does it still have access to our actual Salesforce org that we use, or is it just looking at the Flowsum's repo that it has?
Yeah, good question. So you can do a connection to the org that it's installed in, or you can connect to external orgs as well and pull in that metadata. So basically, you'd set up a connection to whatever org you want to pull in the metadata from, and that would be your context that you can provide to it.
Oh, cool, cool. That's awesome.
I was wondering if you could speak to implementing a philosophy of standard testing. We have a fairly typical account contact product relationship, and I'm getting started taking this over from another employee. And I am trying to understand what your recommendations are in terms of many of our manual tests are just written as find an account, enroll in a program. What is your recommendation on, in my head, if you choose the exact same one every single time, you might miss something. But if you go to random, first off, I don't know how to program Provar to make it pick randomly. But then also, if you go too random, then you might get false negatives. Could you speak
Right.
to that for a few minutes and guide a newbie on that?
Yeah, Natasha, do you want to step in on this one actually, since this is kind of more your area?
Yeah, actually, I wasn't able to listen the complete question because I was reading a chat in the Zoom chat.
Okay. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
it was basically around just some guidance on test strategy around he's talking about basically where they have simple scenarios that they're covering, but they want to think of some more edge cases, that kind of a thing, and figure out a way to do that more dynamically to where it's not as dependent on the team creating the test cases to come up with all those scenarios. Am I summarizing that accurately, Russell?
Yeah, you're kind of a bit higher altitude. I'm specifically aiming towards like we want a test that says, can we create an account, or we're going to run into any errors. After we create the account, can we add a contact to that account? After we've done that, can we enroll in a program and complete that order and then cancel it or transfer it? And so we have to pick. We're creating a new account, but we don't always want to create a brand new account. Sometimes we want the test to pick older accounts um, to make sure that it works in both directions. And if the testing works as well as we're hoping it does, we may, for every release we do, we may run both as regression tests, create a new one and pick an old one. What I'm not sure about is when you're picking something, like what product are we going to enroll in? What existing account, what existing contact are we going to enroll, have enrolled in the program? We could say, oh, this is our test account. This is our dedicated test account. And we just do that every single time. Or can we pick randomly? That way we're not accidentally getting a pass when, oh, that doesn't work because they live in California. So we didn't get the error. The error only happens when they live in Maryland, which is, of course, a ridiculous example, but you can extrapolate what I'm saying there. So what I don't really know and would like some guidance on best practices, how can you pick? How can you have Provar pick random accounts or pick from a list or something like that? What's your guidance to start on that?
okay, so generally as a best practice, we always recommend to create these prerequisite kind of a records in the test case itself, so that whenever your sandbox got refreshed, you will not be able to, because like if you're working on a single record every time, when your sandbox got refreshed, you will lose everything and your test will break. So as a best recommendation, always try to create your test case independent. And as a prerequisite, you can use APIs. You don't have to go with the UI part to create an account. Pick a API, create an account, pick a API, create another contact, create a relationship between them. Because in Provar, you don't have to worry about creating a relationship between 3 different products. Create different products to the API. It will take a seconds to create those, create a relationship between them, and your prerequisite is ready. And now you can test the actual functionality of the test. But in case if you want to pick some records from the your org every time, you can use a SOQL query. And in that SOQL query, just provide your filters. And based on that filters, the Prover will give you the result of your recorder account, whatever you need to work on. And you can just start work on that. But as a best practice, always try to create your test case independent if possible. Does this answer your question?
It does. I have some follow-ups. First is you say to create independent.
Yeah.
Independent from what exactly?
Okay, so when you're referring to pick any of the record from your org, first thing you need to make sure your filters are correct. As you mentioned, like you have to make sure your programs are linked to that account. To avoid this situation, if you're creating a test case independent and if you're creating your account, contact, opportunity, everything in the same test case using API, your test case will be independent and it will work always. Secondly, if you're relying on any specific record, always like you have SOQL query, you have a name of that record, you're picking from SOQL query, you're fetching the ID, or maybe if you're going on the UI from a list view, you're picking that record. If your sandbox got refreshed, or if someone accidentally delete that record, your test case will break.
So I'm curious about the idea of the refreshment of the sandbox. I was thinking about that also because my thought was, oh, we should have some test cases that we do immediately after the refresh. And these test cases could be to create these test accounts. But if we refresh every 4 months or so, that means that we're never going to be able to run a test on an account that is older than 4 months. So should we be running certain tests on newly created accounts, maybe the ones that are created either that day as part of the test or those that were created after the refresh? And then also some tests on some legacy accounts, some specific ones that are several years old.
Yes, you can. So it's up to you. Like if you want to pick those records, yes. And even after refresh, if you are sure about like those records exist in your org, yes, you can use that. But if you're not pretty much sure about that, just create your test case independent and just create those records in your test case itself.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess a follow-up question for that too is, do you have your sandboxes all refresh on the same cadence, and do they all refresh every time, or do you have different thresholds for that? Because maybe there's different levels of testing for different sandboxes as well.
Well, we're really only interested in, at this juncture, we're really only interested in using Provar in our main training sandbox. It's the one step down from prod.
Okay.
So that might be a good question when and if we decide to expand Provar. But then the refreshing cadence, the cadence isn't what matters to me. It's roughly every 4 to 6 months. That's not what really matters to me. What matters to me is more the roadmap of what to do around the refresh. After the refresh, do A, B, C. Then do X, Y, Z on repeat until the next refresh. Then it doesn't matter to me if we do the refresh every 2 months or every 12 months. We have our roadmap.
Yeah,
but it does
that makes
sound to
sense.
me like there's not a scenario where you're saying you should have Provar go out and pick randomly, either randomly from any account you have in the org or any account based on a particular, or is that what you meant by SQL query? Like
Yeah,
do a SQL
yeah.
query
So
that returns however many records, and then it's just going to pick one of those records.
right, I mean, queries are deterministic, but they can be different based on the where clause that you use. So you could use a where clause that is based on today's date, and it could say, so then maybe you run it today, you get a different list, and then you run it a week from now, you get a different list of records, and then it'll use those. So that's one idea to where it's semi non-deterministic in terms of the data that you're getting, but and it's still, I guess it's variable, right? It's still deterministic, but it's variable. So that would give you good examples in that case.
Good.
Yeah, good questions though.
I have other questions, but I saw a whole bunch coming through in the chat, so I'll let other people take the stage.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'm gonna switch over to chat. And maybe we can look at some of those. The first one in here, I'm just gonna go from the beginning, was we use our own project management app built on Salesforce and distributed as a managed package. Do you have any recommendations or best practices for integrating with Quality Hub? And are there common pitfalls or things we should avoid? This is a great question. So first of all, is that managed package something that is distributed on the App Exchange, or is this an internal app only? That's one of the questions I have. If you could either answer in the chat or come off mute, either way. Well, I guess if it is, it's on the App Exchange. Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good information. So if it's on the App Exchange, that actually gives us some integration capabilities natively, because those can both be, it's something that we could actually test on our end as well if we wanted to. But as far as like how you should integrate with it, so Provar Quality Hub managed package, so you're familiar with kind of the structure there. So the data structure, you can get that from installing the app and kind of get an idea of what's included in there. But I will say the documentation has all that information as well as far as how to integrate with it through APIs. But since you would likely be installing these apps in the same org, probably the preferred approach is just to utilize perhaps a flow-based integration. It's usually the simplest way to go, where you create some flows that trigger some automation to occur based on some, record having a certain field value or something like that. We actually package a good number of template flows in the Quality Hub managed package that you can create your own version of. So we have a lot of people that do this where we'll create a generic flow basically for running Provar test cases. And you can create your own version of that, and then you can configure the record trigger logic. So if you have your own app with its own objects and fields, that can be the record trigger that enables the run Provar test cases flow. That's one example of how I would integrate. It's probably the shortest route to success, is to utilize what's already there and then build upon that, create your own version of it and see if it works for you. And then once you have that template in a good state, you could even add it to your package as a dependency to where it's automatically there whenever you install a new version. So that's maybe one route to go. As far as common pitfalls or things to be avoided, I wouldn't suggest installing them in different orgs. I would not suggest doing any hard coded integrations through Apex, because those are going to be subject to change. And that could break things on your end where you then have to go and update all the code. So I wouldn't suggest going that route out either. But other than that, I think the flow-based integration is probably the best route there. There was a question about manager being deprecated. I think Jen covered that one. So it's just, we've renamed it to Quality Hub. There's no deprecation there, and the app works with V3 as same as it does with V2. And then there was a question from Sarah. We are new at installing Quality Hub. We are testing it out in a sandbox before moving to production. How do I connect automation to Quality Hub so my tests appear and show coverage? Any documentation on that? Yes, there is. There's documentation definitely on our website. Whether you're on V2 and V3 doesn't make much difference there. The process is the same. You create your connection to Quality Hub from V2 or V3. And then once that connection is created, basically it creates a test project inside of Quality Hub. And that's kind of the first step. Once you have that test project created with whatever user you've authenticated as, you can then begin uploading your test plans, uploading your test cases into Quality Hub. And then once those are uploaded and mapped, anytime you run from the test plan level, the report will happen directly inside of the app. So you'll be able to see those execution statuses. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of documentation on that. We can follow up with any direct links that may be useful. I know there's a number here. Jen has been answering a few. I don't know if you want to jump in, Jen, and maybe help me orient myself.
Yep, there were a couple of questions about V3 installation. So we do have a demo video on that I will include in the follow-up for this. Getting started in V3 is really simple. You're just going to download and install V3 on your machine, and then you're going to create a new workspace and import your project. It's very similar to working in V2, but we do have the demo to go over just a walkthrough of V3, but also to see those steps in action. So I'll be sure to send those in the follow-up. Michael, I think the next question is about support window between V2 and V3 for end of life of V2.
Yeah, so we did kind of discuss this in the beginning, but the V2 end of life window is set for the end of the year, December 31st, 2026, meaning that there will be, after that date, no further updates, bug fixes, security patches, etc. So generally the way that goes is if you encounter any issues or anything comes up in V2 post December 31st and you raise a case for it, the general recommendation will be to upgrade to V3, and then we can address that in there because we won't be providing any patches or anything like that for V2 post December 31st. Hopefully that answers that question.
And maybe is there any type of support available during the migration phase or not?
Yeah, so support is available, of course, between now and until the end of the year as far as like migrating to V3. But if you're still in the process of migrating post December 31st, then we can help with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Facindo, yes, the Quality Hub is on the App Exchange. It's listed differently because we've listed it along with our automation product. So the the recommendation is to not install through the App Exchange directly. It's to install directly from the Success portal. That's where we have the install links. But once you have the app installed, you can actually do upgrades directly from within the setup page.
If you'd like to test in parallel during your migration, your existing license can be used in V2, and we can get you a trial license for V3. You just can't use your license in both at the same time, but we can definitely get you a trial license so you can have access to both at the same time.
Yes, but they do use the same license type and everything. Nothing like that has changed as far as how we do the license validation. It's just if you have two apps open of Provar, this goes for even if you have two versions of V2 open at the same time, it'll use two licenses. So if you have V2 and V3 open at the same time, it's going to hold two license seats basically. The floating licenses work for Quality Hub. Quality Hub is a managed package, so it uses the Salesforce package licensing. So essentially, when you install a managed package in a production or developer edition org, then it gets registered on our partner business org. We take a look at the org ID and then we activate your license and we adjust the number and the expiration date from our end. So and then you assign licenses to individual users based on who you want to use the app. So say you have 5 licenses, you go in there into the manage package, manage licenses, and you assign whichever users in your Salesforce org you want to be able to access it. And then we also have permission sets that go along with it, so you can configure and fine tune the access depending on what they want access to within the application itself.
I think we got through everything in the chat. Are there any additional questions? While you're thinking about it, I would like to invite all of you to go into the customer forum if you have not done that. These are really great questions and conversations that we can have in the forum as well. So we are going to have another office hours session in a couple of weeks, and you'll get that invite as a follow-up to this session today. But definitely take advantage of our customer forum, and we can have those conversations there as well. And I think there was a question coming in as I started speaking, so please go ahead.
Yes, I did post 2 questions in the chat. Like the first one is, if I execute the tests against different environments on the Quality Hub side, is there a way that I could see the executed org that the test is pointing to? Because there's high chance that I could run the same test against different orgs, like sit and UAT. When I do that, I want to differentiate on my dashboard, like on which specific environment this execution went through. Like probably I want to maintain like 2 different dashboards for like environment specific.
Yeah. Yes, you can. So we have the same concept of test environments in Quality Hub that we do in automation, and those can be uploaded and synced. So whenever you go to upload test plans, test suites, test cases, there's also the upload for your environments that you've created in automation. So if you've created dev, QA, SIT, et cetera, inside of Provar Automation, when you go to upload, you'll see that window to where you can sync those into Quality Hub. So then whenever you set that test environment and you run a test plan against that environment, it'll report to that environment inside of Quality Hub. So then our dashboards are aware of all that. So they'll report on the test environment specific results automatically.
So when I upload, it shows the option of the environment upload as well, or like it's like test connections would, when I do the upload test connection, environments would automatically get picked.
Yeah, so whenever you go and when you have the upload dialog open from automation to upload into Quality Hub, you should see the environments at the top there to where you can upload those as well.
Okay. The I'll try that. Thank you. The other question that I have is, so currently the test executions object, it has the start date field as like start date time field, which has configured like which we have configured to use like the custom range as like yesterday, because like my dashboard is like triggered to basically send out the email notifications every day morning from the last night's execution. And that date range I have set it to yesterday, but what I'm running into more often is like the developers would also want to execute the same tests or like subset of tests in the daytime as well. So if the same test getting executed from like feature branches run against like different sandboxes, and also the same test getting executed from line nightly run, it's basically uh, is like showing the duplicate on my dashboard because I had set the range as like yesterday. I'm trying to find a way. Like I still want it to be like a custom, like dynamic approach of like yesterday, but I do want to like set it with the time range as well. In addition to that, custom function. For example, like my cron job, like the Jenkins job, which triggers like every day at like 6 p.m. I still want to pull only the metrics from that execution. So in order to do that, like can I set that range from like yesterday, like after 6 p.m., after like my cron job trigger, something like that?
Okay. So you're wanting to know about a specific date range filtering in your custom dashboard that you've built, or in the one that we've packaged with the app?
It's a custom dashboard that I built. I'm using the standard
Okay.
objects that came with the managed package.
Okay. Yeah, that is very specific. So I may need to see exactly what your use case is to provide a better answer. Because I'm not sure is my response right now without looking at it specifically. Um,
I
yeah,
have
sorry.
it open, but yeah, I can catch up later.
Yeah, we can follow up and maybe take a look at that one because I would need to see exactly what your dashboard looks like. I mean, if you're using the provided objects and fields and everything, then it should be possible. It just depends on what that date time comparison is giving you for those executions. Now it's reporting them as separate executions, right? It's not reporting them as the same.
It's reporting twice.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to see it from like the feature branch executions or like the data. I'm only concerned about like the the results that came through like the nightly execution.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, so there's something specific in the filter that you could adjust perhaps to exclude those. I don't know if there's something unique about them, uh, the environment that they run on, the operating system, or um, maybe the date range just needs to be adjusted. But yeah, if you want to follow up on that one, we can provide an answer on that one.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't see anything else in the chat. Are there any other questions that we have? Sarah? Having difficulty hearing you. If you'd like to put it in the chat, that might be a little bit easier. Anyone else while we're waiting to see that chat come through? Okay, oh, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Maybe you could help me with this also. When we do create an account as part of our tests, we then need to reference that account and have that account do a bunch of stuff later on. What is the feature that I'm looking for in terms of how to take that that account out of one account? Is it output parameters or is there a better way? What am I looking for?
So if it is in the same test case, or if you have created some callable for creating in that account, so then it will be output parameter of that callable, and you need to call it the parent test case. And if in case if you have a scenario where you need to use the same account for many other test cases where you are not actually calling that, you can write down this account ID into Excel file, and for other test cases you can reference this Excel file as an input.
Good. That was my next question: is what field to look for? Account ID is the best way to do that, or it's the only way to do that?
No, this is the best way. Otherwise, like if you are creating your account name as a unique, you can use a SOQL query to fetch again the account ID. But eventually, we need an account ID to navigate to that record always.
Sure. And is there documentation on how to implement SOQL queries? I've done the first two courses certifications. I haven't seen that yet.
I'll share a documentation related to the callables, input and output parameters, and maybe we'll have for the SOQL query as well. We'll
Thank you.
provide. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we are coming up on time. As I mentioned earlier, I will be sending that follow-up email with those demo links that we talked about, some of the documentation links that were discussed, the invite for the follow-up call. And again, I just want to encourage everyone to use the customer forum so that we can keep these conversations going. I'd also love to hear from you about what you would like to see in these office hours sessions. We really appreciate the engagement, and this is very helpful for us today as well in terms of understanding what you're looking for. But we'd also like to know what you're looking for from us with our webinar content. So any ideas that you have, anything that would be helpful, we'd love to hear from you so that we can make sure we are meeting your needs when we have these sessions. And there was one other question in the chat. Michael, if you want to grab that really quick before we go. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I just read the question out loud, but the question is it possible to continue developing new tests simultaneously during the migration process? I'm assuming you mean from V2 to V3, and yes, you can continue that. Our general recommendation is if you're evaluating V3 or you're thinking about migrating, again, I use the term migrating just because it's common terminology, but it's really not a migration process. It's just a new version of Provar. So there's really nothing to migrate necessarily. You're just installing a new version and then creating a new workspace, copying your existing project into it. So whenever you do that process of creating a new workspace to use with V3, anything you develop in V2 stays in that V2 workspace, right? So you can continue to do that if you wish, or you can continue to do it in V3. But just obviously be aware of the drift there that may occur. So that would be one point of advice. Just if you are doing that and you're wanting to continue test development, then my recommendation would be that do the evaluation in a short-term window and then have a commit date so you don't have too much drift that's happening between the two workspaces. And yeah, everything in V2 is meant to be forward compatible to V3. Everything in V3 is not meant to be backward compatible. So once you go to V3, there's like a project upgrade process that happens typically, and there's also new features capabilities in V3 as well. So once you've done something in V3, it's not meant to go back to V2. So just that always keep that in mind as well. But yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, everyone. Again, look for that follow-up email from us, and we look forward to seeing you in future sessions. Please use the forum to keep the discussions going and let us know your ideas for what you'd like to see and hear from us. Thanks so much.